What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here. Hope you guys are having a good Monday night. And it's another Monday Night Live. So hit me up with any questions in the comments. I've got a bowl packed here. Oh, man. I was trying to remember what I've got. I think this is... I don't remember. I know I've got GG4, but I don't think that's what this is. I think this was something else. Pink something? Pink mist? Is that a strain? Anyways. All right, so got a couple of questions here. What's up, Crystal? Hey, GTA Dave. Black and Gold Quoter asked, does the bank consider debt-to-income ratio for a HELOC, and can you have multiple active HELOCs? You know what? Off the top of my head, I don't really know if you can have more than one HELOC at a time. You can definitely have more than one credit product on a mortgage. I'm going to say that usually, rather than give you two mortgages, they're likely just going to consolidate whatever you got and try and make it into something that'll work a little bit better for you. So I think it's pretty uncommon, but I don't really know. Can you report tenant rent payment history to credit agencies? Here in Ontario, Canada, or in Canada now, I think across the board, we've got the Landlord Credit Bureau. So I believe that's the only way you could actually go about reporting that. So hopefully that helps. When you bought your first property, how much money did you have left over? As a saver, I'm used to seeing a large bank balance, but it is hard. Trying to transition to equity dollars you can't see versus cash. Yeah, I definitely understand that perspective, Sonny. I think the way a lot of us initially get over it is by keeping track of our net worth on a spreadsheet, on an Excel document or Google Sheet. And by doing that, it kind of, makes us more comfortable with the fact that we're maybe cash poor, but equity rich once we buy that property. It's just the nature of the beast, I think. For me, I saw it as a productive asset, right? Buying my first rental property. So I knew that that was going to generate more cash for me in the long term. So because of that, it was naturally attractive to me. So it was never that big of a hurdle to overcome, but I definitely understand that mentality. And I guess a better example, Sonny, that I can give you that I go through on a regular basis is growing businesses. So real estate to me is a very simple business, but there's a lot of other businesses that have a much greater risk of failure than my traditional real estate business. So based upon that, when do you take profit from your existing profitable businesses? For me, I'm constantly in the growth phase. So I'm constantly doubling down and actually, reinvesting the profits over and over again. So that's definitely, I think, a challenge. And I can remember talking to Stefan Arnio a couple of years ago about personal brands and about the amount of money both of us had invested in our personal brands, and how difficult at times making that investment was when other people would go buy a nice house or a nice car or a nice watch, and instead we're doubling down investing in our personal brands, believing that long term was the better investment. I think you need to apply a similar sort of logic when you're thinking about your portfolio in real estate. Revolutionary Design was asking, hey, Matt, what do you think of XRP or cryptocurrency replacing fiat? So it's something we dabble and talk about on a semi-regular basis here on the YouTube channel. So I think Bitcoin's really interesting. I think blockchain technology is fascinating, and that whole ecosystem will definitely make a lot of millionaires and billionaires, and will also make for a lot of people that have some crazy war stories. I think the one thing you need to be really careful about is getting into what a lot of people would term shit coins. And I think I probably take the Bitcoin maximalist sort of view when talking about shit coins, and I probably identify everything other than Bitcoin, or at least certainly everything other than Bitcoin and Ether, as kind of being a shit coin at this point in time. Now, again, that doesn't mean it can't evolve. So I'm not necessarily hating on them right away, or I'm hating on them right away, but it could evolve with time. So for me, again, Bitcoin's always been interesting. I've been watching it from afar for a while. I can remember back in the day, I think 2012 or 13, Kevin Rose and Alex Albrecht talking about it on Dig Nation, right? and being like, oh, that sounds kind of interesting, but just was over my head. I didn't get it. I can remember them talking about Ether when it first came out, and again, kind of over my head. I didn't get it. Then back in 2017, 2018, during that bull run, I started a meetup group, got an ATM, started looking more into that space. And again, I was like, yeah, there's definitely something here, but I just don't see how I'm ever going to know how to pick a winner or a loser. So based upon that, I'm just going to stay on the sidelines for now. And, you know, my mind's evolving now and my opinion's evolving as well. I think there's a lot of signals now that Wall Street's likely to choose Bitcoin as a winner based upon some of the headlines and some of the major moves we're seeing. So I think it's interesting. I do think that this stuff all takes longer, though, than most people think. Understand that since the U.S. went off the gold standard, like since the 70s and 80s, gold bugs and silver bugs have been saying how the U.S. fiat currency is going to crash or implode. It hasn't done so yet, right? And it's definitely what a lot of people in cryptocurrency or Bitcoin in particular are speculating or waiting for as well. And while I think we're closer than we were in the 1970s, I think it still may end up being a little bit earlier than we realize. So I don't think you need to panic run into cryptocurrencies, but I think it's a great time to start learning and self-educating. I'm going to smoke here while I check out Jeff's question. So if private lending to a developer, at what stages would you advance portions of the funds? Jeff, first things first, I probably wouldn't private lend to a developer. That's a big long-term project. I wouldn't want to get involved in something like that. So for me, it just wouldn't fit within my investment criteria. Now, for anyone that's private lending on a development, if it's your first time doing so, please, I really encourage you, reach out to an expert, sit down with someone that's done it before, get a feel for it, because this is a whole different endeavor than just lending on a normal residential property. So I just want to make sure that you're going in eyes wide open. There's a much greater chance of default. There's much greater risks you're taking on, and the timelines you're looking at are going to be substantially longer. Beyond that, you're going to really want to focus at the capacity of the individual buying it and whether they can really take this to market or at least take it to the next stage where it becomes more marketable, where you can resell it. But those are definitely some factors to keep top of mind. All right. Is there a relationship between bonds and gold? These days, can you correlate any sort of relationship, or can you like really commit to saying that there's any relationship between any financial product or data point? I'm not even sure if stocks are tethered to stocks anymore. Josh said, hey, Matt, thanks for all your online content. The amount of knowledge you freely shared is legit, and I appreciate it. Southwestern Ontario focus. Awesome, Josh. Glad to hear you're getting value and appreciate the support in the comments. Hey, Matt, can you tell me how you handle difficult tenants? I'm sure you have some stories. Yeah, Brian. So I've actually got, if you search it, I've got some YouTube videos and blog posts on my 10 commandments of landlording. That's probably the best place to start. But a few tips that I always, excuse me, a few tips that I always bring up when talking about dealing with tenants is one of them is friendly, but never friends. This is really important. We can be friendly. You can be Canadian, but do not become friends with your tenants. You're asking for trouble and you're setting yourself up for frustration and failure if you go that route. So just don't do it. Another saying you need to memorize is company policy, no exceptions. So again, we can be friendly with our tenants, but it's important that you follow the rules. There's a reason the rules are there. As well, in addition, it's important to understand that should you find yourself in front of the landlord-tenant board, they will almost never give you the benefit of the doubt or speed things up to help or enable you. So it's important that we just follow the rules from day one. And again, if that means the tenant's late on rent, it doesn't mean that we need to aggressively serve them their N4 form. It just means we need to serve them their N4 form. So what I mean by that is, you could aggressively serve it, but you're late on rent. Here's your form. I'm going to evict you, rah, 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 which is all very aggressive, unnecessary, and not going to help anyone. Or on the flip side, you could be like, hey, here's the N4. I know you're late on rent right now. I know you said you're going to have it by next week, so don't sweat. This doesn't mean you're being evicted right away or anything. Don't panic. But I just need to file this form to follow our company policy, which is just to file the form soon as it's applicable. So I'm filing this form, but again, you're a great tenant. I don't want you to panic. If you pay me next week, this form essentially disappears and it's no big deal. So again, that's really the importance of company policy, no exceptions. So we can empathize with the person and the situation, but again, you still need to be a business owner first and foremost. Josh, I'm looking to dive into my first burr. I've rent out houses and flipped, but now I'm curious on where to find reasonable deals. MLS, sure, wholesaler lists, off-market deals, anywhere else. Josh, earlier this month, Adam Martin from my team decided he wanted just to kind of prove a point to serve as an example for the wholesale team, and he decided he would go generate a bunch of leads. And one of the ways he did that was simply by going on Kijiji. And I believe he got a couple contracts off of Kijiji just looking at for sale by owners. So while that area isn't always overlooked by investors, understand that a lot of the best practices that require any amount of work, 99% of people just won't even put in that bare minimum to do the work. So in that case, Adam and I have been teaching people for years now that there's literally free money on Kijiji if you go look under the for sale by owners, and yet still we can find deals in our hometown, which is crazy to me. I love that, Edward. May your lungs inflate like the housing and auto market. That's hilarious. Why are real estate agents not reporting criminal involvement in the field? You'll have to be more specific in that regards, Michael. I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to. If you're relating to some sort of like money laundering and stuff like that, I know that there's a lot of people that think or view Canada as like a money laundering central. To be honest, most realtors I don't think would even know what's going on. All of them are going to do their FinTrack stuff, and that's that, right? Like they're not. But if you're referring to some other sort of illegal criminal involvement, let me know what's going on out there, and I'll give you my opinion. All right. Thanks, Matt. Utility is everything. Oh, Bitcoin buyer was saying, yes, there's a relationship between bonds and gold. The primary factor for gold increasing or declining is the yield on 10-year treasury. Higher interest rates are bad for gold. Yeah, I don't really pay attention anymore. So honestly, I don't even know if those are as tightly correlated as they once were. I'll take your word for it. If you're still actively paying attention to those things. I used to pay attention to like gold and silver and all those things like in my early and mid 20s. Like obviously those things still impact the world and macroeconomics for sure. But to be honest, on the micro scale, I found that it's usually so much more worthwhile just focusing on the little microcosm of whatever I'm investing in. Try and go a mile deep in whatever your niche is. So if your niche is like bonds or gold or whatever, by all means, double down in that space. But I think oftentimes a lot of us get distracted by knowledge for knowledge's sake. And one of the things I've recently really started to try and emphasize in my content is that information without action or information without intention to act is essentially just entertainment, where information plus action results in experience, and that eventually calcifies into competency, right? Into ability. All right. Awesome. Hey, Matt, thanks for helping me retire before 30. What do you think of buying condos, resort units in Huntsville area and put them on Airbnb? How do you think they would perform comparing to a cottage? Daniel, I don't know a lot of information about that area, but the first thing that immediately comes to my mind is I wouldn't be surprised if Huntsville has a lot of NIMBYism. So I would really make sure I understood the exact Airbnb rules and the condo board rules before looking at a short-term rental in a condo in that market. Because I got a feeling it'd be similar to a Niagara Falls or a Wasaga Beach sort of market, where those markets are often the first markets to try and restrict short-term rentals. And I wouldn't be surprised if Huntsville also falls under that. I haven't looked deep into it, so just something to be aware of. Outside of that, those condos are not cheap. So if the numbers make sense and you think you've got a valid business case, awesome, go for it. But really make sure you're doing your due diligence in regards to the use of the unit, as well as whether the numbers actually make sense for you. Because I would just be scared that you may not actually cash flow. Matt, how do you structure deals where partners providing down payment for principal, payback, percentage of equity, ownership, and exit of investor? Thanks, Dane. So how do we structure deals where partners providing the down payment for principal, payback, percentage of equity, ownership, and exit of investor? So obviously, you can structure a deal almost however you want when it comes to real estate investing, and that's one of the great things about it. Now, in general, some common practices we'll see is oftentimes, Dane, if an investor is bringing all the capital to a deal, often in small real estate transactions, they're likely qualifying for the mortgage as well. So they're likely going to go on title. So what that often looks like is they buy the property in their name, they qualify for the mortgage, they bring the down payment, the renovation funds. Oftentimes, they're considered the passive investors, so they're the money partner. And then you've also got the active investor who probably found the deal, had the business model, knows the people. Maybe they're going to do the day-to-day management or manage the day-to-day manager. Again, each deal can be structured however you want it, but those are some of the common ways we see it. And most common, that's a 50-50 split. Again, it doesn't have to be that way. It can be 60-40, 40-60, 70-30, 30-70. Really, any random ratio you can think of that adds up to 100. But the vast majority of times, people like it simple and clean. So we'll often see 50-50 with the money and active partner. And they'll literally split everything 50-50. So 50% of the equity, 50% of the cash flow, 50% of the deficit if there's a deficit and there's a cash call. But again, you can structure that however you like. Have you heard of lumber going up another 100% price, transitioning into steel framing or bricks? I don't know if this is a statement or not. Lumber definitely went up a lot last year. If it's doubled again this year, I believe that's news to me. I guess my biggest question would be, are we talking a double of last year's price or a double of this year's price? Because that would almost be a quadruple of last year's price. Anyways, either way, input materials are very expensive. It's the nature of the beast. I don't see what would dramatically drive their input costs down. Now, maybe some of these things are slightly inflated and we could see a pullback in their pricing a bit, but I don't think we're going to see that actually hitting the pocketbooks of the average investor. So I think whatever new ceilings of input costs we see reached will soon become our new floors, unfortunately. What's with the thumbnail? Why so high? I'm not sure. I would have thought it was our normal thumbnail. We smoke weed every Monday night here on the channel, so maybe that's what you're referring to. So yeah, literally I've got my bong right here, and I've got another bowl pack, so we'll smoke again a little bit. So if this is your first time here, Sensei, that's what it's about. Would you ever build your own purpose-built building from the ground up? Yeah, if it made financial sense. The biggest issue I'm going to have with building something from the ground up is making sure that the return on time makes sense. So the overall return on investment may look promising, but usually we're talking about a multi-year project. And just understand, that's a long time. That's actually a really long time in my world. I've only been doing YouTube for 5 years. To commit to a 2 or 3 year project, imagine how different my businesses or my priorities could look 2 to 3 years from now. So I'd either need to be very hands off with that project, or it would need to be such an important or big project that I'd be willing to really pour myself and my focus into it for extended period of time. That's kind of the way I would think about it there, Sonny. Hey, Matt, what's the most luxurious area of London? Hyde Park, River Bend, lowest crime rate? Yeah, there's some great areas, and I'm sure different people will even have different definitions of luxurious, but in general, the nicer areas, a lot of people will have a bias towards the west and the north. So, those are two areas that I think that you'll find people are attracted to. Now, Byron is a very common area when people are talking about nice communities. But again, areas like Wortley Village or Woodfield regularly win like best community to live in. Old East Village may not be for everyone, but actually is a pretty cool eclectic neighborhood. But if you're looking for, large kind of McMansion type houses in the suburbs, probably Byron is the area, or maybe pockets of North London and other areas of West London. What's the best way to start wholesaling in Toronto? Where did you first start? You really just get started. If you've got a little bit of money, a flyer campaign is a great way to get started. If you haven't checked out Cashflow Tribe, we regularly are teaching about this weekly at Cashflow Tribe. So happy to talk on those classes. So for example, if anyone watching this right now, if you guys didn't realize, every Monday night from 7:30 to 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, I teach a live Zoom class where I answer Q&A. So yeah, flyer campaign if you've got a little bit of money, German Shepherd life. If you've got no money, then I would either try and team up with a existing wholesaler and maybe become a bird dog for them, or existing investor and become a bird dog. Or you can look at just like searching Kijiji and Facebook for sale by owners, networking, maybe talk to a couple investors, poke and prod and see if there's any opportunities in their portfolio. And the real key is just to keep putting yourself out there. Real estate's a contact sport. The more people you come in contact with, the more chances you're going to get to find an opportunity. The more chances you get to find an opportunity, the more likely you will eventually get an opportunity, or the sooner you'll get the opportunity. Organized crime in Canada views real estate as a priority investment. What more can be done? Well, I think real estate in general, when you're looking at flipping and stuff like that, naturally lends itself to that. If you really wanted to try and crack down on it, just more and more monetary controls and policy. I personally don't love that stuff. Maybe organized crime is a way bigger issue in Canada in real estate than I realize, but I guess it's not something I lose sleep over currently. Chris is asking 80% or 75% loan to value if you're buying a corp. Depends upon your lender. I wouldn't be able to say off the top. Each lender's different, but I imagine most of the time it's going to be 75%. All right. What else is here? Okay, guys. I feel like I'm just talking nonstop, although I feel like I must talk every time on this. But anyways, I'm going to do a screen share here. And earlier today, I was looking at some properties. And I didn't get a chance to go through all them. So I'm just going to finish up my house hunting. Feel free to keep hitting me up with questions, and I'll keep answering them as well. And yeah. Josh was saying here, hey, also wondering when property management for tenants becomes financially viable. So when do you stop managing them yourself and invest in a property manager? Josh, you should always be budgeting to have that in your numbers. So even if you want to make your investment more profitable by self-managing, that's fine. But I would always run your numbers as if you're going to hire a manager, And the reason for that is we all want to build a real estate business, not a real estate job. And if you're not careful, you can easily build yourself a real estate job. So that's why it's critical from day one. You're factoring in those costs. I really encourage people to use a 10% property management fee and consider that to be your cost of both property management as well as snow and grass. So really, I think of that as 8%, 1%, 1% when doing my numbers. So that's what I'd encourage you to do. And then as far as when do you actually hand it off, I essentially did the first probably the first 6 or 7 years self-managed, but then eventually pivoted and insourced it all. With hindsight, I wish I would have done it sooner. I think I would have been able to grow my portfolio and been more successful faster and scaled more successfully had I done that from day one. But I was being frugal. All right, what are the questions we got here? How do you generally estimate utilities for rental properties? Ideally, we just get some basic numbers from the existing owners. If not, I usually just use a benchmark of whatever I've got available for data. So, for example, if I'm looking at student rental and it's 6 bedrooms and I own a 6-bedroom student rental, I'm just going to assume that the utilities are roughly the same. If, for example, you live in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, and you know what your utility costs are, again, that could be an okay benchmark initially. But otherwise, if we're not talking student rentals or really large houses, but instead like small multifamilies, in a purpose-built dwelling, I would say 100 is probably going to cover you. And in a non-purpose built, maybe add another 20-30% on top of that, and that should cover you for just like general ballparks. And then for the non-purpose built, you'll have to add heating on. For the purpose built, we'll have a boiler or something, so that heating cost should be given to you. Another 100%. Yeah, if that's true, that's crazy. I don't follow it enough. Again, we don't actually do a lot. I don't do any new construction. Upper price chart. So it looks like we got a article here from Fortune. Okay, well, if this looks true, it doesn't look quite as crazy, right? It looks like we're actually just kind of returning. Again, I know that may not be retail prices, but right now it doesn't look terrible, right? If we were 829 there and we're 986, again, don't love it, but I think in context, that makes it look a little bit less scary. But yeah, that's expensive. Again, I think the key here is when you're thinking about factors like that is, so what, right? What does this mean? Well, one, it means that new builds are going to become more expensive, right? Because the input costs more. Two, it then means in theory that we could see the same money that would have competed for new builds instead go and compete for existing stock, right? So resale homes or resale real estate, again, could see more money competing for it. In general, all this means is probably more pressure on the real estate market, right? In a price manner. With markets moving so fast, how would you go about finding a JV before finding a deal? Yeah, Stephen, I think that or Stefan, sorry, or I don't know which it is. But either way, I would I would still just focus on your fundamentals, right? Like it's still just your business model. The underlying numbers may shift a bit, right? So let's say you're using a 6-month-old example or case study when pitching your deal. Let me just get rid of the screen share for a sec. Remove. So let's say you're pitching like a 6-month or 1-year-old deal, and maybe everything's 20 or 30% more expensive now. Well, what I really lay out for them is the base case study and then do an updated model with a 30% addition or like increase in everything and just kind of lay that out, right? And again, pull your comps, make sure you focus really on current or recent comps, particularly if that's very important to this working out, right? Like if that's critical to your pitch. If you're going to be paying more for a property than your 6-month or 1 year ago historical case study example, then let's make sure that we're also pulling more recent comps to help justify that, just to show that like, hey, yep, the market's moving fast, but I'm staying on top of it. I've got my data. And again, you can reach back to those CREA stats that we regularly show here and also use that to help justify that, hey, in general, the market's going up. Most of the time, Roman, I'm going to say it's often not going to be worth the hassle of changing the zoning unless you're going to specialize and become the guy or girl that changes the zoning, in which case it'll almost always be worthwhile. So what I mean by that is, if you're doing it just out of convenience, most of the time it's not going to turn out just to be a convenient, easy thing. However, if you can spot properties or parcels that have a high probability of being converted because you've got some sort of competitive advantage because you spent some time researching or learning or making friends or whatever, then it can make a lot of sense, right? I know people that specialize in severing lots. And so that's really the only type of real estate they want to get into because that's the niche they've carved out for themselves. And so, that makes total sense. But for a lot of us, like for me, it's not an area I'm specializing in, so it just doesn't make sense for me to get too distracted by those things. So unless I just stumble into a great opportunity or the market drastically changes around me and my deal, I'm only going to do that out of happenstance rather than with purpose or intention. Question: are you still really bullish on cottages long term, even with COVID restrictions lessening? First, to COVID restrictions lessening. Have they really? But two, I do hear what you're saying, financial mechanic. So yeah, super bullish because let's think about this. When you in my opinion, when we think about cottages and what my overall thesis is here, right, is that Canadians are going to be bullish on Canadian travel and bearish on international travel. And I especially think that that's going to hold doubly true for those with disposable income and disposable assets, as in retirees, baby boomers, and all those people. They also are the ones most susceptible to COVID. They're also the ones that most likely need our existing healthcare infrastructure anyways. So for a variety of reasons, I really think that those people, one, have been trained and indoctrinated by the government to essentially not leave the country. I'm not saying that was the government's intentions. I'm just saying that that was a weird, unintended consequence of being locked down for a year. And because of that, talk to people over the age of 55. Talk to people over the age of 65. Most of them I know aren't planning to leave the country again. Talk to a lot of people with compromised immune systems or a lot of people with serious health issues. A lot of them, I think, are less bullish on wanting to international travel. A lot more of them will look towards domestic travel. In addition to that, I really think that we're going to see regular lockdowns or regular restrictions when it comes to travel and things of that nature. Not just this year, not just next year, but this is just a thing going forward. Again, the government learned a new toy or a new trick. There is no way, other than this side of revolution, that we're ever going to convince them to give back that toy, right? Like right now, there's no actual rules around masks. We don't actually know when masks can disappear from society, right? We don't know when lockdowns can just disappear. There's no actual benchmark. There's no actual rules. This is actually just a bunch of healthcare professionals and bureaucrats hijacking our entire system. Again, I think that most of them have good intentions. Poor execution, but good intentions. But because of all these unintended consequences of their actions and behavior, yeah, I'm wildly bullish on vacation and recreational properties. Because again, those grandparents that regularly went to Florida and brought their grandkids and their children with them might now decide, nope, you know what? We're going to Niagara Falls, or we're going to Port Stanley, or we're going to the Muskoka cottage rather than going to Florida in the winter. I could see them also wanting winter cabins and things of that nature. I definitely also see a return to your house as your castle, and people investing a lot more into their homes as well. But again, just my opinion. But I am very bullish on that. All right, so I'm just going to keep looking at some properties here, and I'll keep jumping back and forth with the questions as well. I actually, like, this is sort of my homework, so I actually legitimately try and make sure I look at every valid listing that comes up. I think I've actually seen some of these already, though, so. Who is behind the signs that say "We buy houses"? Wholesalers? Yeah, Steven. I'm going to say the vast majority of the time. Although they're like, if you look closely, some of the companies now don't actually say "we buy houses." Some of them like say "we refinance houses" or "we finance houses." So there's more than just wholesalers now really using that bandit sign strategy and using the word house. But definitely, I think the vast majority will still be wholesalers. All right, let's smoke another bowl. Daniel asked a question that I'm going to say no to, but definitely contact a CPA. Contact your local tax professional, and I'm sure they can help you out. Hey, Matt, what would you recommend if someone doesn't have enough for a down payment for a house? I've got about $100K, but live in Vancouver, BC. Is it worth it to get mortgage insurance or just buy a condo? At the end of the day, Kamsies, it really comes down to what is your goal? What's your intention? So I know that's never the answer people want to hear, but it legitimately is what you need to focus on, right? So what's your goal? Is the goal to invest, or is this an emotional decision? If this is an emotional decision to buy a property you want to live in, well, then just understand it's an emotional decision and base your decision criteria accordingly. If instead this is like, nope, this is a pure investment decision, then what you need to do is create a set of like metrics or criteria for you to base your investment decision upon, and then force yourself to abide by it. Don't compromise. Oh, what is this? Here I was thinking I was just looking at something boring, and then quickly it turns into a motel. I was like, just boring house, boring yard. What's that? What's that? Wait. So what are you? 2,400 square foot, 4-bedroom, 2-den, located in the quiet shores of Wood Lake and Lake Country. This lakeshore property is part of the 14-unit development of the spot. Making a spectacular holding property for future development. Oh. What the fuck? Ugh. I am so confused. Yep, I've got no idea what that's about. So let's just move on. Now this looks pretty. Ooh. Hate. Unless that's our property, guys, that's too close. That is too close. Although that was a very strategic photo because it looks like it's in the middle of nowhere. Man, that's very strategic. Those are some very strategic trees. what other questions we got here? So yeah, anyways, Camzys, I would really encourage you, if you need more clarity on what your goal is, jump over to Instagram, guys. On Instagram, you can find a link to all the free shit that we give away. Oh, I probably don't want to go into my DMs. On Instagram, if you go to my profile, you can go to my link tree. And if you go here, discover your why. This is literally a completely free e-guide. I think I was pitching it earlier today on my live stream as well. But swear to God, this is we worked really hard on this ebook. I'm extremely proud of it. I think it's very valuable. And if you're a little bit lost and not sure where to get started in real estate investing, I think it's a great way to get started. It's got some great examples of how to set a SMART goal as well. If you guys want to learn about buying a cottage, click the cottage e-buying guide. I put together a 6,000 word, completely free e-guide. It's got all kinds of tips, tricks, terms. Literally, I think this is must read shit. If you're looking to buy a cottage in Canada. And what else we got? We got my Fire e-guide. So this is a free ebook. We just got all the free ebooks. So it'd be wonderful if you guys grabbed your free copies. And then we've also got a Mars, how he made $25,000 in 68 days without spending a dime wholesaling. So for those of you looking to get started in wholesaling as well, this is also another great resource. But yeah, check out all those completely free ebooks. And yeah, sign up for the pitch also if you got a deal to pitch me. All right, back to this beautiful property whose neighbors are way too close. Those look nice though. Man, that looks picturesque. You guys think, are there filters on this? Yay or nay in the comments. Do you think, are these photos filtered, or is BC just that beautiful? Here's the dilemma I find myself in, guys. Real talk time. You want to buy a mansion. Ontario's expensive, but close to a lot of people. Quebec is cheap, but it's Quebec. BC is beautiful, but it's on the other side of a continent. Again, understand, I guess, circling back to this discussion that we were having about cottages and stuff, I've talked to family members and been like, hey, if I buy a place or a compound down in BC, will you guys fly out? And I've got responses from older family members that are, nope. I'm like, okay. So again, I really do think that we're going to see behavior changes amongst at least certain cohorts of Canadians. I think we've kind of looked at just about everything now. And maybe a little fast rolling through a couple of these, but all right. Yeah, I think that's good. Let's get back to questions. Hey, Matt, been following yearly since you started. Wondering, have you ever dealt with probate? Just had an offer accepted on a duplex, but can't close until May 23rd. Any way to close sooner? Love you. If it's going through probate, probably not. You can't really speed that shit up. And if anything, don't be shocked if there's a short delay, right? So we've definitely had deals that have dragged on because of estates or probates and shit like that. So if there's anything quirky or unusual about the situation or the deal, I would really sit down with your lawyer and just make sure you got a firm understanding of, can this go sideways? What's a realistic worst case scenario look like? What sort of delays could I be looking at? All that. Brian, yes, Toronto has a city land transfer tax. Almost no other city in Canada does that. But Toronto's so nice, it's the city that makes you pay twice. What do you think about making huge multinational corporations partially responsible for the affordable housing? Make every new Walmart have a second story of rent-controlled space when they move in to smaller communities. I mean, I can definitely understand the intentions behind something like that, Chris. I think the big thing is, though, understand that you just get all these weird unintended consequences when you start having government regulate things. So, off the top of my head, can I come up with a whole slew of spin-off things that would go sideways on that? I can't, but like there certainly could be. So I guess that's just one thing I'll say. But one in general regulation that you'll find fights against that is no city would let you, right? So a lot of cities really are restrictive in regards to where commercial zoning and residential zoning are, and they oftentimes don't want the two to overlap. So look at it. It's very rare you're going to find a Walmart right beside residential real estate. If anything, maybe the Walmart's on a major thoroughfare and backing onto the Walmart is maybe a green space or whatever, and then there's a subdivision. But it's rare that you're going to find like a subdivision's roads connected to a Walmart's roads. And again, a lot of that has to do with city planning. There's some fascinating documentaries and papers and just general studies discussing all the unintended consequences that like zoning and bylaws and things of this have. Again, they certainly can serve their purpose as well. But the one thing that I think if we really wanted to try and solve any sort of affordability crisis is we need to get flexible on zoning. And we need to get flexible on where people are allowed to essentially live. So the first thing that would change the picture on just like a wild scale here in Ontario, and I understand the reasons why they wouldn't do this, but if you were to allow, spaces that are less than 6'5" be grandfathered in and allow smaller, older apartments that, have been used for decades or sometimes a century to continue to be used rather than become obsolete because it no longer fits today's building code, you would find a lot more space available. As well as if you start allowing, like, I live in a big McMansion house. If you start allowing these to be chopped up and subdivided into multiple units, you would find all of a sudden a lot of affordability issues would be solved. Now, the issue is I live in a kind of a semi-fancy neighborhood here in London. I'm sure my neighbors would go apeshit if we turned this into a sixplex. But honestly, if you let us turn it into like a fourplex or a sixplex, and you had half the neighbors do it in this subdivision, again, those are the things that actually massively solve housing affordability crisis. One other thing that would be huge is we actually need to normalize, living with roommates and multi-generational living. I think it's a real shame that every person thinks that they need to live completely isolated from everyone else and that, you're not fully an adult until you own your own house and live alone. I'm not sure why being separate from the tribe all of a sudden makes you more of an adult. So I think that there's a lot of things like that need to be explored if we really want to seriously try and solve those issues. Otherwise, I'm sure that random politicians will jump on to random stump speeches or ideas, but most of the time they're just seeking votes. They're not actually trying to find a true solution. Pierre came out talking about how raising interest rates affects on the housing market. Do you see that having any effect if it starts gaining media attention, or people won't care because free money? I don't think the government can effectively significantly raise interest rates. I think that they're in between a rock and a really hard place. And because of that, and because literally the entire economy is addicted to cheap debt, they'll just never be able to, like, at this point in time, to take us off the at this point in time, to take the patient off the drug or off the heroin would literally just kill them. So if you were literally just take us off cheap debt too fast, you would just kill our economy. And we've talked about this before, guys, but go look at the Bank of Canada's balance sheet, right? And go look at what happened back in 2008, 2009 and stuff, and look at what's happening now. You thought that it looked crazy back then, the sort of potential inflationary policies or the government's easy debt policies. Right now makes 2008, 2009, 2010 look like a joke. Hey, Matt, I'm closing next month on 2 pre-construction semi-detached. What do you think? Should I convert it into a duplex? If you can, and that's the highest best use of the property, that makes a lot of sense to me. Dazed and confused. Laugh out loud. Must be good stuff. Okay, awesome. I'm not sure at what point I got confused, but I'm sure I did. Question, what are your thoughts on the proposed wealth tax in Canada? Also, 100% agree with you on being bullish on cottages for the same reason. Also, congrats on 72,000. Appreciate it. What are your thoughts on proposed wealth tax? I don't know what specific proposed wealth tax is currently going around now. Is there one that's currently in vogue by a certain politician, or is it more just like the general proposed wealth taxes that come out time to time? Because I guess what I'll say overall is any tax, anything that you come out with to try and like really go after the 1% or rich people. And honestly, I don't know at what stage you end up in that bracket, right? Is that the top 2%, 1%, the 1%, the 1%? But wherever you kind of level that, those people aren't going to get touched essentially by any of this shit, right? There's always different complex ways to structure our affairs and our investments in such a way to protect ourselves. So like if all of a sudden they were to roll out a wealth tax that taxed like my personal assets, you'll probably just see a lot of, investors and business owners will probably find ways to keep a lot of their wealth in their businesses longer rather than bringing it into their personal name. And if they found some way to solve that or tax that as well, we'd find some other sort of thing, right? If you take it too far, then you'll literally just have rich people fleeing your country. But I imagine any real wealth tax that they implement here in Canada will either have no teeth or will end up actually just like hitting the middle class. Because again, there'll just be a way for wealthy individuals likely to get around it. Again, unless we're talking about some crazy NDP program, which is just like they hold a gun to our heads and take all our wealth. In which case, let's not vote the commies in. Can we just all agree to that? Thank you. It's to invest, but won't break even. We'll sign up for the e-guide. Awesome. Yeah, definitely encourage that. And understand if you're planning to invest and you're not breaking even on the investment, it's definitely not going to be my favorite investment philosophy. I personally view that as relatively risky. I really like properties that cash flow because that way you can weather any temporary disruptions, right? If you're currently not cash flowing and properties drop by 20%, it's going to be really hard for you to have the commitment, the fortitude to weather that storm. But if properties drop 20% and you're cash flowing, as long as you're cash flowing or breaking even, it's so much easier to hold on to that asset and weather the temporary storm. Because again, I think most of us believe that the government's using inflationary monetary policy. The dollar will be worth less 10 years from now than it is today. And based upon that, investing in asset classes like real estate, at least in theory, makes sense on the surface. It's just a matter of us making sure that the holding of those assets makes sense as well. I'm really struggling with equity financing or debt financing. Can you mention anything about this? I guess, Ian, the most classic version of this, if I understand you correctly, and you're saying equity financing, which is taking on a joint venture partner versus taking on debt, which is just loans and things of that nature. Usually the best way to describe this is understanding that 1 + 1 can equal more than 2. So in a perfect world, if you're taking on a joint venture partner, hopefully they're accretive to your business. So if they're only bringing money, hopefully your business really needs that money. If your business doesn't really need that money, hopefully they can bring something more than just that money. Or maybe they can bring more than just their money. But the classic analogy is, do you want 100% of a grape or, a chunk of a watermelon? And that to me is really the value in these JV partners and equity financing, is being able to have a 1 + 1 = more than 2. When like startup companies are looking to take on investors or board of directors, they're often not just looking for who can invest the most amount of money in their business. They're also looking for who's got experience, who's got connections, who's got relationships that they can bring to my business from the industry that will help give us a leg up. So again, in a perfect world, if you think you bring a lot to the table and that a money partner that only brings money isn't bringing enough to the table, then simply redefine the relationship. What else does that person need to bring to the table in order for this investment to make sense, right? To me, it's like saying that you're not willing to sell a piece of real estate. And that's just insane. Everything has a price, right? I would never sell this piece of property. What if it got rid of COVID? What if it solved world hunger? What if world peace? Are you still really not willing to sell that piece of real estate? Okay, well, maybe then. Okay, so there is a price at least. And that's the same thing with like a joint venture or debt financing or equity financing, is there's always a price. So just at what price does it make sense for you? And oftentimes people are just too worried about holding on to what they have rather than looking at what they can gain, right? That idea of an open palm catching more than a closed fist, all that good stuff. Is beautiful British Columbia that beautiful? That's funny. That does sound like a direct quote from me. Hey, Matt, I've got $50K for a down payment. Which city would you recommend looking into? The first thing I'd really encourage you to do is reframe that question, because again, what you're saying is, I've got a hammer. Have you seen any nails? And I just want to make sure that you're really committed to this hammer, because choosing to do something just because you've got $50,000 is rarely going to be a good reason for an investment thesis. So the better thing is to focus. What are you trying to accomplish as a real estate investor? What's your goals? Go to some of those e-guides we were talking about, check them out, go through it. Once you understand what you're trying to accomplish, then figure out, based upon that, what are the best markets, right? And what sort of resources you'll need. So if, for example, your goal was to generate cash flow and you were like, hey, I'm looking to generate cash flow and I'm based in Ontario, so I'd like to invest in Ontario. What markets would you suggest? And oh, by the way, I happen to have $50,000, but I'm also willing to go get more money if needed. I would say Southwestern Ontario probably would be an attractive market to you. Could you find a property that could cash flow with $50,000 down in this market? Probably, but it's probably going to be a smaller market, or like in a Chatham area. Maybe you could find something in Sarnia. But again, I hate the idea of being restricted based upon one arbitrary factor like that. So I'm really going to encourage you to think twice before making that your sole reason for investing in an area. Just bought a house. I close in 2 weeks, and I've already appreciated $100K. Doing rentals before, more in, and can afford $1,000 extra to go to the equity. What's the best strategy to refinance to invest? Darnell, the first thing I'm going to say is just make sure that your investment strategy still makes sense. So this is a really hot market, guys. There may be times that buy and hold that you thought you were going to hold forever, the markets got so hot, so aggressive, that maybe it makes sense to sell. So first, double check any pre-existing assumptions about your investment and check it against the reality of the situation. But outside of that, really look to see if the market's appreciating significantly in your area. Is it now demanding different types of renovations? So even in these hot markets, not all areas are appreciating equally. So this could be a pocket that, one, is hot because all of Ontario's hot 2 because your local city's hot, and hot 3 because your local market's gentrifying, or that street or that neighborhood's gentrifying. So again, make sure you're looking at all the factors there, and then just do whatever renovations are going to get you the highest return on your investment. But again, understanding what your exit strategy is will make it really easy. Do I listen to Peter Schiff? I've heard some of his stuff. I enjoyed listening to him most of the time. I definitely don't see eye to eye with him on everything. That being said, there's very few people actually in this world that I imagine I see 100% eye to eye on. So if I remember correctly, Peter's also big on Puerto Rico and stuff. So I think all that stuff is interesting to me. And yeah, he's obviously a gold bull, but he's also got a vested interest in that, right? And I think it's important we go eyes wide open, the same way that you guys should be eyes wide open about me in real estate. I do believe I'm a rational, logical actor, but I do have a lot of exposure to real estate. So I likely am going to have certain blind spots or biases. Jacko, yep, been going on a while. I've been hearing the rates are going up since 2008. It's going to be worse than 2008. Hey, Matt, I'm 10 and have 50K saved up for down payment. Which cities do you recommend looking into? We already answered that. Okay, 19. That makes a lot more sense. The stimulus postponed the inevitable. Definitely kicked some cans, that's for sure. Do I own any Ethereum? Not enough to even be worth mentioning. I don't think I'm not an expert on Ethereum. I wouldn't even claim to be an expert on any cryptocurrency, but the bit I do know about Ethereum is I think it's fun. I like it. We're playing with it. Right now, it seems impractical for a lot of the use cases it wants to be used for because the gas fees are so high. So certainly that needs to all get reined in if it's going to become sustainable. But again, if I understand what a lot of people want to use it for, it either needs to evolve or pivot to continue to be effective for some of its uses, or else I think it could be susceptible to other coins. So again, not an expert. But yeah, I'm probably going to start dabbling with some NFTs. I'll do a show tomorrow on NFTs, I think, but fully aware that it's in a crazy hype bubble. And this is just kind of fun for me because I think overall this shit's here to stay, even NFTs and stuff. And I want to go through the bull and the up and crash of it so that I can really see who sticks it out through the NFT crash that I imagine we're going to go through at some point. I really want to see who are the players that have longevity in that space. And I look forward to making strategic alliances when that bubble pops. And if it turns out it doesn't pop, then it'll be a fun, it'll just be fun to watch and eat my popcorn. I imagine if we did see a drop in housing market, you'd see our border open up to heavy immigration a lot sooner. Yeah, I think that there is a couple levers the government could pull if domestic demand wasn't enough to sustain the real estate market and they wanted to see real estate prices stay where they are. Yeah, I could definitely see them using that as one of the options available. In fact, I'm pretty sure that, in 1 month this year, we had 27,000 PRs, right? When normally we do 2,000. So I know my buddy Adita watches those stats very carefully because back in the day, that was a very important thing to him. So it may still be, for all I know, he may have family or friends coming over. Good question. What does retirement or financial freedom mean to you? For me, retirement is a vague term. So I think for me, oftentimes when I'm speaking about retirement, I use it interchangeably as a word for financial freedom. Financial freedom for me is really about having a financial fortress of solitude, a sound foundation that essentially means you can maintain a sustenance level of survival indefinitely. And because of that, it gives you a certain level of confidence and assuredness just as you navigate this world. I really encourage it for every individual. Go get the ebook for anyone interested, the free ebook on financial independence, because it's a game changer, right? again, a lot of people would likely continue to work their jobs if they like their jobs, even if they're financially free, but they're going to have a different approach to it. And in fact, I imagine a lot of the time their employer and the business would be better for it if they actually could speak up more confidently, right? And they could actually try and influence change more. But right now, a lot of people don't want to rock the boat because they need that paycheck. So again, I think financial freedom is huge, but I think you just need like bare lean fire, and then you can go and kind of do the firepreneurship that I'm talking about. Awesome, guys. Well, I see that we're at an hour now, so I packed one more bowl. I'm going to smoke it, drink my water. You guys hit me up with a couple more questions, and we'll do those, and then we'll probably call it a night. But smash that like button if you enjoyed hanging out with me on another Monday night marijuana madness. Interesting question here. Hey, I'm a single mother and can work anywhere. I'm thinking of moving from Toronto to New Brunswick. I can buy a house for $150, thinking of Moncton. What do you think about real estate and area? I think that's a really interesting idea. If you can work geographically independent, I really encourage people to get out of Toronto. Not that I've got anything against Toronto. I have no doubt you're a world-class city, guys. I only make fun of you on TikTok because it gets me engagement. But man, the real estate, I just don't think it can justify the cost of living, right? Like, I don't think that your quality of life is that much better. So, an area like Moncton, New Brunswick, I'm just pulling up some stats on it because I want to make sure I speak accurately. But, 85,000 people is a good size city, right? Like, you've got all the bare amenities in a 50, ideally 75,000 plus city in Canada. You've got all the bare necessities and a little bit more. So I think it's really wise. If you currently own in Toronto and you can sell and buy in Moncton in cash, or, even buy in cash, refinance it, and then invest that into whatever is your thing, whether that's real estate, stocks, other investment assets or businesses. I think a lot of people should use this opportunity, this bull cycle, this bull market, this bull run in Toronto as an opportunity to take money off the table. And again, maybe you're not ready yet. I would really encourage you to think taking, sell now, rent for a year or two in Toronto, buy your dream home now out in the sticks or in another province. And even if you have to commute between the two for a bit, I could really see that being attractive. Again, some people may want to live and die in Toronto. That's awesome. But understand there's a sacrifice to that decision. So sell your portfolio to Wall Street. Yeah, if Wall Street wants to buy, my shit's always available for sale. So I've got no issues with that. Just depends upon the price. Do you think people will wear face masks after COVID? You almost have to define what after COVID is. I think that we're going to see COVID or face masks or this stuff drag on for a while. I don't say that with relish. I just say that with what I fear to be an accurate foresight. To quit your job, to get into real estate full-time, or to keep? Carlo, really a personal decision. For 95% of people, they're going to be better off trying to balance both, at least for a while, before jumping all into real estate. If you're one of the crazy few, go ahead and jump now, but that's definitely not for the faint of heart. Someone's just really insisting I sell my portfolio to Wall Street. Hey, man, I might literally have to block you, and I'll put you in timeout for now, but it's pretty rare. I think that's the first time in a long time. Awesome. Appreciate the love, guys. And yeah. All right. I'm going to wrap up. But it's been a cool hour and 10 minutes hanging out with you guys again. Love it if you would smash the like button. I'll be back here next Monday. We'll do the same thing. And otherwise, I'm going live every weekday at 5 p.m. So you can always get more live Matt McKeever there. Thanks, guys. And we'll see you tomorrow.